In the early years of the 19th century, the Shenandoah Valley was one of the most productive farming regions in the South. During the Civil War, it became known as the breadbasket of the Confederacy. Battles raged up and down the valley as both sides struggled to control this critical resource. In the end, the valley was devastated. Today, it is still a rich agricultural region where the past and the present mingle in the rural countryside. Like so many towns in the valley, Timberville slumbers. The reason for the town's existence seems to have been forgotten, but the town and its history lives on. The North Fork of the Shenandoah River flows through the town, along with the railroad. Neither disturb the peaceful winter afternoon. I stare at the blank window and try to imagine a summer evening now gone. Children play in the yard as a train makes its way into town. Do they run to the fence to watch, or do they live so close to the tracks that the train is just another familiar sound in the twilight, with the tree frogs and the mockingbirds? The tracks pass through the town of Woodstock behind old buildings. The doors opening onto the tracks have not been opened in a long time, and the red cedar trees that spring up so readily in Virginia are starting to work into the unused spaces. A woman walks her dog. It's late afternoon, and life goes on. The Old Valley Pike, Route 11 on the maps, was the main north-south road through the valley until the interstate highway, which runs parallel to it, came along. Nothing much has changed here over the years, and the tracks still run through town, but it has been a while since anyone has had to stop to let a train go by. A friend once told me that the birth rate in railroad towns was much higher than anywhere else. Why would that be, I ask? Because, she said, when the 5 a.m. local rumbles through town, it is too early to get up and too late to go back to sleep. Drive down the main street of a small town in the valley, and you will see the public face of the community. Neat lawns, tidy storefronts, painted houses, window boxes with flowers. But if you pass through on the tracks, you see the private part of the town. The untidy backyards, the back of worn-out buildings, the no longer used and forgotten. The tracks may not run through the prettiest part of town, but the view is more interesting, and hence its stories to be told. The tracks run behind the church. You can't see them in this photograph, but they are not far away. Many years ago, a restless young boy might have sat in this church on a summer Sunday morning. It is already hot. In the distance, a whistle blows, calling to the boy through the open windows of the sanctuary. A very faint smell of coal smoke drifts in, and the boy hops on this train he cannot see and rides it until the sound fades into the morning and the closing hymn begins. I spent more time here than one would think necessary for such an ordinary scene. There was something about the place that I couldn't quite put my finger on, a photograph that I couldn't quite see. This happens sometimes on a quiet Saturday afternoon in a small valley town. Maybe it's the stillness, or the unblinking crossing guard that is not going to lower its protecting arm and stop traffic for a train. Maybe it's the faint but urgent shadow of time going by and disappearing down the tracks forever. On a cool afternoon in early spring, I parked along a busy street in Edinburg and walked a few yards down Railroad Avenue. The signs of modern highway culture suddenly disappeared, and I seemed to have stepped into a decaying past. Spring was in the air, and with it the promise of renewed life. But there is no such promise in the future of this old warehouse or the railroad that once served it. Shiny rails disappearing into the distance are full of promise, travel, adventure, reunion beckon. But on this winter day, the rails are lined for the horizon, but in place of promise, rust and weeds. It seems an odd place for a garage surrounded by winter resting farmland. A sign next to the door reads, "Not responsible for accidents or theft on premises." Between the building and the tracks, old cars are parked in the weeds and wires crisscross overhead. Who worked here? Who once stood outside the door in the afternoon sunlight to smoke a cigarette and watch the train go by? Who remembers this place when the railroad was just another part of life in the Shenandoah Valley?